Hello and welcome to Northeast Ohio Media Group's Candidate Debates. Thanks for joining us. I'm Linda Kinsey. Today we're hosting a debate for Valley View Village Council up for election November 3rd. I'd like to welcome to my far left Councilman Thomas Perk and his challenger Thomas Oden. Council members Barbara Drockton, Julianne Jakubasak, Darlene Malicki, David Westfall, and Jeffrey Wyatt, and challengers Brad Bowery, Artis Stallings Jr., and Bruce Weber could not be with us. The candidates will get to introduce themselves in just a minute, but first the rules. We will start with 1 minute for each candidate to introduce themselves and explain why they're running. Then we'll ask questions, giving each candidate 90 seconds to answer and a minute for a follow-up. At the end, we will allow a few minutes for the candidates to ask each other questions or to bring up topics that we might not have discussed. So let's get started. So Tom, why don't you begin and introduce yourself?
Well, Tom Oden. I've actually lived in Valley View, moved in Valley View in 1969, and other than a short time when I moved out for a few years, discovered that it's best to live there again, and I bought land back in the village and built a house a little over 10 years ago and moved back. I like living in Valley View. My background has been in finance and accounting. I am a CPA, and I worked for a company, initially the Horvitz company that was in Valley View, and then later on, their investment offices, actually I set up the investment office, and I was their chief financial officer for many years. Actually, been with the family for 45 years. And I'm running because the mayor asked me to run because of my financial background, and my son is also on the school board and the president, and convinced me to run too.
Thank you. Councilman?
I'm Tom Perk, Councilman Tom Perk. I've been an elected official for over 28 years. My background is I was a Cleveland firefighter, retired as a lieutenant for 33 years. I always believed in government, that you should serve your citizens. I also moved to Valley View with my family back in 1980. We built a house and we moved into Valley View. I had 4 children that went through the school system, graduated, and all 4 of them graduated from college. My son went to the Merchant Marine Academy, and now I'm a proud father of 4 grandchildren, a grandfather. But since I've been elected as councilman, I learned that there's a lot of things that had to be changed in Valley View. Some of them was, even as young as council was in the 90s, we didn't even have council rules as councilmen. The mayor picked everything for the council people. So that's it.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to move on to a few questions now. And actually, Councilman, we'll start with you on this one. FEMA a few years ago revised the flood maps for the village, requiring a larger number of residents to have flood insurance in order to secure a mortgage or protect their property. How has that worked out, and how in general is flooding being addressed these days in the village?
Flooding is one of those things that comes up every elected official, and every time it rains, a bad rain, people come up. We have worked with FEMA and the state government and ourselves that have raised in houses in Valley View in the flood area. We have put a lot of our own money into it to help the residents raise their homes so they can stay in the village and work that out. Flooding, years ago I predicted we should maybe put a dam somewhere up in, I have done at Mayfield, the cemetery at Garfield. I can't think of the cemetery now. But they have a dam there, and all it does is control in the cemetery. If you went there, there's a little creek goes through it, and when it rains, it holds back all the water. And somewhere down the line, we should do that with Tinker's Creek and the canal, if we can hold back the water. The other thing that FEMA lets us, or the federal government lets us straighten the river out, everybody tells me that the river's straight and it'll run a lot faster and the water wouldn't do it. But our biggest goal right now is to raise houses, and we probably raised, I think, 4 this year, And I think there's a list next year that we're working on too.
Okay, all right. Would you like to address that issue?
Yes, I've lived down there, like I said, many, many years. I've seen a lot of flooding over the years. But recently, because of the various, raising the houses on Charles and Francis, basically, and some on Murray and Fosdick, has helped a lot, and people don't want to move out. So that the other issue was Foote's Farm Market that would always get flooded, and actually they raised it, his house and the farm market, and I know he got a lot of funds for the government, and at this point in time, I think he's totally safe. He's high and dry, and actually he's got dirt from my property when I was building, we put over there. We also tore down some buildings, the Floodwater Cafe for one, and some of my dirt went over there too, and we have a nice park there. So I think a lot has been done over the years. I don't think flooding is nowhere near the problem it was 20, 30 years ago.
Well, what about residents, though, and raising of the houses? Are you in favor of that?
Oh, yeah, I'm in favor because the residents really don't want to move, and a lot of this has already been done. There's only probably not many more houses left to do, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Tom, during your campaign, what is the one issue that you hear most from citizens that they want addressed?
Well, the one thing from the citizens, and it's not really that surprising, I walked around in Strathmore, which is the big development in Valley View. Tom lives there. And I went with my sister-in-law, who happens to be a widow, 75 years. She's lived there a long time. And we went to other houses that also have single widows living there. And the one thing I noticed is there is a little bit of fear of safety. Not so much from Valley View, but from some surrounding communities where there's been bank robberies, armed robberies at Mark's store just a few weeks ago. And, that is a concern of the citizens. So as far as I'm concerned, one of the things I like to do is to spend some time and develop some programs, and I've got a lot in mind, to help this, so the people there in Valley View. So it's a safe village, and I think we got to keep it that way, and we can.
Okay, Councilman.
Valley View, Tom's right. Valley View is a very safe community. It's hard because of all the times I walk around, it depends which section of the village you're talking about, which people are worried about. In the flood area, they're worried about what's going to come there, the floods. If it's the higher area, they're worried about road work. I mean, it's something. They're not. Valley View is. We're blessed as a community because of what we have done in the last 20, 25 years of bringing businesses in Valley View, that we have a good income coming into the village. So I think Tom's right, safety is always an issue, but we have grown our police department over the years. We are just putting in our police squads, we're putting cameras into their cars. It's going this year. And that's one thing I always fought, is because I want not only that the policemen to be safe, I want to make sure when they stop somebody that they don't get accused of something they didn't do. So there's a lot of, on that point there, citizens a lot of them are happy. I mean, they might not get along with their neighbor, but they are happy, most of them. And that's the problem. Most of it is the neighbors. Something wrong with the neighbor. They don't like their neighbor.
Wow. So, Councilman, what are you most proud of in your community?
Well, there's a lot. The one thing is that I fought very hard at the time. We had a part-time fire department. We had a full-time fire department that worked from 8 to 4, and then the volunteers took over. And as the village grew and everything else, one of the big things is I'm part of is that we got a full-time fire department. We have a bigger police department. We built a beautiful police and fire station. And in the late 90s, we built a community center, and we already added on to it. So those things are proud. I mean, but that's something that you have to work with the people. The fire department was voted down by council. We went to the people and they wanted it. I take that back. The fire department was voted at the last second. We had the fourth vote to do it. That was the thing. The one thing I'm proud of that we were able to get a charter going for. We're not a charter city yet, but we were able to get a charter, at least a charter commission getting going and charter, and they were just this close from passing it. I think they wanted too many changes, and the citizens said no. They liked the way the village was run. But the point is, I think the important thing is if it doesn't pass at council, I am willing to go door to door and work and put it on the ballot and let the people vote. And you'd be surprised how many times council rules were one of them. See, that was a big thing. Charter was a big thing, and that point right there, those are a couple big things that I'm proud of.
Great. Tom, what are you most proud of?
Well, I'm proud actually to live in Valley View. Like I said, I had experience moving out for a short period of time, and I realized what a great place it is to live. I'm proud that, you know, we're really in the middle of the park. We've got a great park, we got a great city park, we have a great metro park on the towpath. Actually, the people, I have no problem with the people. I've lived in some other cities, and we got that country atmosphere in Valley View that you don't have in a lot of other cities. We have literally country living in the city. When I moved shortly to North Worldton, I had city living in the country. And it was just, you know, smaller lots. I can breathe. I've got 13 acres of wooded land, you know, heavily wooded with streams and surrounded by the park. And it's just a very, very nice area. And I'm proud of that. And I've got great neighbors. I had great neighbors at my other house. And give you an example, my son bought our old house because he wouldn't want to move. And he's, you know, lived there all his life.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, thank you. So Valley View is one of those smaller communities, it's a village,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and we often hear the subject of regionalism brought up, and sort of a companion to that is whether you have ever thought about merging with a neighboring community, and where do you stand on those issues, Tom?
Well, I think we've already set up some relationships with other, like independents and some of the others as far as joint use of fire department. I'm sure Tom can even expand on that, and police and other areas. Like I said, living in a bigger city, well, I actually grew up in Garfield Heights, and seeing what we have now, I like what we have now, but I can also realize that we got to share facilities with other cities, and we can do that, you know, with joint agreements. In fact, I understand we're going to be closing our small jail at the end of the year and combining it in Cuyahoga Heights to save some money too. So some of that's going on already, and you know, I'm in favor of that, but I like to keep that small town feeling. If I got a problem, I just have to walk across the street and see the mayor. You know, I don't have to go through a councilman or some district and get frustrated, you know, because there's no action. The action happens within, in the few cases I had some requests of something, happened within an hour or two. So, you know, you don't get that anyplace else if you have a problem.
And Tom's right, he says the jail is one of the things that we're combining, we're looking at the combining. We have done, we're working, I think we're also looking down the future to combine with more than one community with our dispatching, which is something the county wants anyways. But we're looking at that as a regional thing. Four communities share dispatching right now through Cuyahoga Heights. And realize, and I think the fire departments were looking at it more of a regional thing, but they really respond and they do mutual aid with each other all the time. There used to be that we had when I first got elected, every year you had to have like a contract you had to sign. And after 9/11, the state changed the laws, and it's almost that, you know, regional is if you need help, they should send you at least some. They don't have to send you everybody in your department, but you can send help. And that's one of the things the state laws help to provide with the fire department, police department. And we had an incident in the village, and you'd be surprised how many departments came, and they came in and helped with that situation. And that's something we can, we're very proud to work with. And the key is the dispatching, because everybody's radios all work. It's frustrating if you can't talk to everybody. So that's the goal we're looking at, to keep everything up to date.
And merging isn't something that you would have any interest in?
Nobody. You know what, I'm going to be honest, and I said this to the mayor of Cleveland Heights when we were talking about dispatching and working. I says, nobody wants to give up their little community. Cleveland Heights doesn't want to give it up. Independence doesn't want to give it up. Valley View doesn't want to give it up. Brooklyn Heights. Those are, Walton Hills is close to. People just want to be in their little town. They like the little town. And they're right, when they want to go see the mayor, like Tom said, you just go see the mayor. And if you want to talk to a councilman, he'll be over your house in a reasonable time if they're home. And they'll be over there to talk to you and see what the situation is, or call somebody and say, could you send somebody over there and help out our neighbor?
Mm-hmm. And you both feel that the village is financially sustainable to remain independent as it is?
At this point in time it is. I do have a concern. Valley View has 6, 7, 8, whatever, industrial parks of various sizes. And I've been through, actually all of them. And I have noticed that just about in every single one of them, there's vacancies. There's signs up there for, lease, rent, sale. There's raw land for sale also, and it's been that way for years in many cases. And I just have we're financially totally sound at this point in time, but I'm concerned looking down the road that we don't lose that. And I want to think about making sure we keep what we got and we expand it, and we have the facilities. We're sort of fortunate being a great location for industry, where we're 10 minutes from everywhere, downtown, the airport, the east side, Akron, 20 minutes. So it's a great location. The tax base is still low, the property tax rate, even though we did have a fairly substantial increase in the school tax a few years ago because of losing the intangible tax, and also we had this embezzlement. But that's a concern.
Anything you want to add to that?
Well, no, Tom's right. We have, and he's like me. I always try to think of the future, because I look at other communities, other cities, and other things, what they have grown, and then all of a sudden they shrunk. Other communities. So the point is that way. We will work with businesses if they're talking about leaving the village. We will work on we call it an investment into the community. We would take some of their income tax and let them invest, to give them back to the company where they can invest and keep the building, like if they want to make it bigger or smaller or upgrade it. If they're staying there and it's a big company or a big, 50, 60, 100 employees, we will work with these companies. We have worked with every company coming in there. I took the hit in the 90s when I first asked tax abatement from the schools. But near the end of the tax abatement issue, we made it where I asked that we would give 50% of every employee that came in. If it's one employee or 1,000 employees, we would give, as long as that tax abatement, we would give the school 50% of our taxes. At one point, we were giving them more money than they were getting, or they would have got with the property tax. And so it works out with things. And if you work with everybody works together, you can everybody can grow. And a lot of communities are copying our ideas too.
Okay. And this really kind of leads into my last question is, about, growing the economic base, because I do know that when you drive through some of the Valley View industrial areas, there are a lot of, vacant buildings. I mean, I understand, you want to keep what you have, but how do you attract new industry into the
Well, since Tom already went first, I'll ask. Is that fair with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. One of the things is we're looking at, like Gould, the building in Gould now, another company went in there and grew up more of a drug, like a mail out or drug type of a company went in there, and there have been a lot of problems. They're growing. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking for people that want to move in there. I mean, Independence has the same problem. As big as Independence is on Rockside Road, they have the same problem that we have, people leaving and going out. So the point is, if you're looking out there and willing to work with people to come in, we're doing it. We have an opportunity down the line if transportation comes off of 90, off the freeway. We have an area of Rockside Road that I think it's over 100 some. It might be more than that. The 100 acres that if they level it off, and it might be 5-10 years from now, it could be a small industrial parkway right off the freeway, and it wouldn't involve. It wouldn't come. My goal is not to make. There's a residential street that's nearby, and make sure that doesn't merge. Those streets don't merge together. So the industrial park would be all separated from the residential. And that's something you have to look at to keep everything going with the crowd. But you're right, you have to look for the future. You can't sit back and say we're having great today, and I think Tom knows because he's been in business like that. You always got to look for the future and make sure we're growing and modernize whatever we have to do to attract more company. Tom's right, we're 10 minutes from downtown Cleveland. 10 minutes. Once you're on that freeway, you're in 10 minutes from downtown Cleveland. It's great to live it's a beautiful community.
Great. Tom, did you want to add to that?
No, again, I agree totally with Tom, and again, I'm gonna, if I get on the council, I'm gonna work with everyone there and the mayor, and because there are other programs we could do to attract businesses, and there's always more you can do. There's always more you can do, and I also know, working with like Michael Horvitz at his office and some other, and the Jones Day law firms and Key Bank and PNC, where we can put together programs to attract more businesses into Valley View and again, keep what you got. And even some of those that we have, hopefully they'll expand, if we treat them well. So we can keep these industrial parks vibrant because, businesses know. The company I worked for initially back in 1973, the Horvitz Company, moved to Valley View, and at that point in time, they took 20 acres and put all their road construction and their corporate office there. And at that time, they did it because they saved enough money in property taxes to pay for the building, the land, and everything else in 5 years. And that might not totally be true today, but it still's out there. It still exists.
Does the village have a strategic plan or sort of thing? Is that something?
We had a master plan years ago, and it's again too. It's something I like to bring up again to it. We did it with our park back in the 90s. We did a master plan. We bought this park back in the late 80s, and we raised our taxes. The residents raised their taxes to buy this park, 140 acres, and we were able to add 30 more acres to it. The master plan was basically to tell us what we wanted in the community. And they also had residents who were complaining that we were taking a beautiful wooded area and trying to make it too much. And my goal with the company that did the plan is to make it look like a metro park. So we have it like, and Tom will tell you, driving into that park, it's like a little bit of a park. Get to the top, you see a pavilion, see a couple of baseball fields, you see a soccer field back. Out of all the land we have, right at that time with the master plan, was like 28% of the land was being used. The rest of it was still natural. We did a survey back then with the water to go through the whole community, and we're growing. I mean, if you would have saw the park 20 years ago, you would have thought it never would look like it does today.
Yeah. I'm sure Tom's more keen on the master plan than I am, but I think, it's a great idea, and I think, the council should definitely discuss it in the next year. You need budgets for financially, and you need master plans, for everything.
Yeah, and Tom's right. He says some council members years ago, it was hard to get them convinced to do this, and if we had a plan, they didn't want to follow it. So the problem is with people like Tom and good people coming in, we see that we need this for the future to look at it. I mean, no, everybody has a plan. Doesn't mean it's like a baseball player. I'm a football player. They have an idea, but you know they do vary from it. They have to look at it and say, okay, there's a place to guide and go from it. And you need leaders like Tom and I think myself and a few others that are looking for vision. I always say you have to look down the line when you're down the line from council, and that's what I'm looking for colleagues like us.
All right, well, we've set aside a few minutes to allow the two of you to ask questions of each other if you choose to, or to address any issues that we might not have touched on today.
Well, maybe the one issue I guess that is, it's part of Valley View and it isn't, is our school system, because we're part of Cuyahoga Heights Schools. And I am involved. I'm on the Finance Committee and the Audit Committee now for the last couple of years. And the one thing that sort of surprised me in getting involved with this and the school board is some of the areas from a financial standpoint. Valley View had a terrible embezzlement. The schools, not Valley View, Cuyahoga Heights school system had a terrible embezzlement several years ago, like $4.2 million, which I understand is like the second largest embezzlement in the state ever for a school system. And this is a small school system. And getting involved and learning more and more about this, I see where the school system, even though people think, oh, it's audited, it's reviewed, they got great controls, they don't. And some of the people there, even though there might be nice people and fine, aren't totally, in my mind, competent. And I think I've been involved the last couple of years trying to change that with the school board, and I think we made a lot of success. But, you know, that's troubling, you know, when I believe it's not, I don't want to pick on Cuyahoga Heights schools. I think a lot of that, or a little of it, is everywhere in you know, in government. As even by your paper, you report a lot of it, you know, something here or there, problems.
No, Tom's right. I think when I moved to Cuyahoga Heights, Valley View, for the Cuyahoga Heights school system, where my wife saw it happen to be in a paper. They showed how the Cuyahoga Heights, and then we saw development there. We looked at it. And like everybody else, as a young couple with 2 children at the time, I went a little bored what I needed to do. But it was like everybody else. You work harder to keep what you have. People, I mean, and I tell people that if you go on Tinkers Creek, we must have 4 or 5, we have a couple big horse boarding places. Plus we have 2 or 3 small places. You actually have horses on there. We have two farms. One is a family farm from the 1880s still there on Alexander Road. Mm-hmm. They used to have animals, but then I tease with Marty Johnson because it's too much work to have animals. But he does farming, and he does a lot of stuff with the Amish. They teach him how to do some stuff better, and he teaches them how to do stuff better. But we have like 2 farms in Valley View, 2 small farms. And it's something that goes very well. It's a beautiful community. I mean, people love it. When people actually will come there, they'll move there for the community, the lower taxes, and the school. And I'm telling you, when people tell me right off the bat, Tom, I look at other houses in other communities, and I can't afford the taxes on that community. I can afford them here. And that's why Tom came back.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. Thanks again for joining us, and please check back to cleveland.com to read stories about the debates, issues, and candidates up for the upcoming election. Remember that Election Day is November 3rd, and early voting has already started. Thank you.
Oh, good job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.